Hi, welcome to Elise and Her Books. Today I'm going to do my July wrap up and my August TBR. July was an amazing reading month for me. I managed to read 11 books and I also managed to meet my Goodreads year target of 75 books. I'm so pleased with that because we've just passed the halfway point of the year and I've already met my target. I'm not going to raise it, I'm just going to be happy that I've met it and that's that. It's done. And I'm really pleased with how July went. I started the month off by reading a trilogy, and that's the Snow Like Ashes trilogy. So you've got Snow Like Ashes, Ice Like Fire and Frost Like Night, all by Sarah Rush, and I gave each book 5 out of 5 stars. They were all great, and I was worried because I had heard that once you've read the first book, the second book and third book are a bit slow, but actually I didn't find that. I found them all really easy to read. Absolutely fell in love with this world. It's basically a world where magic exists but it's lost, and we follow some characters who are trying to find this magic in order to gain power. And some of the characters want the magic, some of the characters think the magic will be dangerous and that power will go to people's heads. And it's just such a great world. I absolutely loved it and I highly recommend this series. It's easy to read, really. Her writing is so easy to read. Absolutely loved it. The next book I read was a library book, and that was Orbiting Jupiter by Gary D. Smith. I had to give this a 3 out of 5 stars. It was a bit confusing, if I'm honest. I was very confused as to the targeted audience. To start off with, the majority of the book is definitely quite juvenile. I'd say it was middle grade. And then those last 2 chapters, which personally I found the last 2 chapters the only good chapters in the book, but they are really quite deep. The subject is really quite depressing, and I don't know, it's not a middle grade book. It doesn't finish as a middle grade book, so I found the whole thing really confusing and it didn't work. The next book I read was also a library book, and that's Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It involves quantum physics, is it? To do with parallel universes and time, and the science behind it, I have to admit, went right over my head. A bit like The Martian by Andy Weir, I think it is. The science in that book went over my head. However, doesn't deter from the overall enjoyment of the book, and don't let it put you off. It was such a good read, and I enjoyed watching our protagonist go from universe to universe. I'm not going to say any more because I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it's a really good book and I strongly advise it. The next book I read was American Gods by Neil Gaiman. It's pretty big, but I got through it by reading a couple of chapters at a time, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars simply because when I finished the book I closed it and I was like, what have I just read? I didn't get it. It went right over my head. It was so out there that it was just beyond my understanding, and there were elements of it that I enjoyed, so you know, it wasn't like a 2 or a 1 star, but it just wasn't my sort of thing. And I mean, I know some people are going to really enjoy it, but it wasn't for me. Next I did a buddy read with my good friend Rachel, whose channel I'll link down below because she is a booktuber too, and we read Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell. And I thought this book was going to be really difficult because it's to do with a part of history that I don't really know a lot about, and that's the Luddites. It's when the mill owners started to introduce, it was the Industrial Revolution, so they started to introduce machinery instead of people into their factories, so a lot of people lost their jobs and a lot of people actually died as a result of just poverty because they couldn't get any work, and it was a terrible time. And this book is basically about that era, and I found it very educational because, as I said, I didn't know a lot about it. Elizabeth Gaskell's writing is very clear, so even though it's from over 100 years ago, I found it really easy to read, and I love Elizabeth Gaskell's writing, and I'm really happy I read this. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It was a decent read. I read this because it was G over at Book Race. I'll link her channel down below. It was her book jar pick of the month. So basically she picks a book every 2 months, and she does like a Goodreads group where we can all read along with her, and then she'll do a vlog at the end of the month that you can watch her read in progress. Anyway, I wanted to take part, so I read this and I did enjoy it. I really enjoyed the character development in this. There's a character in this book called Kizzy and I absolutely loved her. However, the reason I took a star off was just literally because the science involved in this book, again, I didn't really understand and I struggled with the science. Being a sci-fi book, it was probably going to happen. However, it is a really good read and I am considering reading the next book because it's a series and I know the next book has come out, so I would potentially read the next book in the future. I'm not sure. I'll see if I can get it for a cheap price, then maybe. The next book I read was The Night is Darkening Around Me by Emily Bronte. This is a small little book full of her poetry, just some of her poems, not all of them. And I'm not a poetry person, I don't understand it usually, but I really loved this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and there is a poem in here that really, I just absolutely loved it. It is called To Imagination, and it's basically a poem that says if you have an imagination you can never be lonely. You're never on your own with your imagination. So I absolutely loved it. It was a great poem, and if you're into poetry, read that one. It's great. The next book I read was In Search of Anne Bronte by Nick Holland. I really liked this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, but I mean, it's a book about a Bronte sisters, so that was inevitable. I absolutely love reading everything there is about the Bronte sisters, and this is a really good one. If you're interested in learning about Anne Bronte, this is great. It's all about her life, her experiences, her work, her death, losing her sibling. It's very informative and I really enjoyed it. The final book I read was The Good Immigrant, and this is by various people. It's a collection of essays and it's all about what it's like to be an immigrant in the UK today, and it really made me think about things that hadn't even crossed my mind before. For example, how difficult it is to find a children's picture book where all the characters aren't white. I strongly advise reading this book because it will make you think about things that just had never crossed your mind before. Really enjoyed this book. 5 out of 5 stars. So for my August TBR, I've picked 4 books, only 4 because I start a new job tomorrow, and so August is going to be a bit of a stressful month. I'm going to be trying to settle down in my new job and it's going to be tiring, so I don't really picture myself reading much and I don't want the pressure of a huge TBR. If I finish all these books, I can always pick something off of my shelf, and I did that last month and it worked really well. So the first 2 books on my TBR are kind of a secret guilty pleasure. When I started YouTube, I absolutely hated chick lit and I absolutely hated fantasy, and now actually they're the shelves that are filled the most. I really enjoy those 2 genres. Just goes to show how much YouTube influenced my reading and changed my habits. It's great. And so anyway, the first 2 are both chick lit and they're both summary books. So I've got The Summer Seaside Kitchen by Jenny Colgan. I don't really know anything about this. However, it is blurbed by Sophie Kinsella, who is like the queen of chick lit. So hopefully this is going to be a good one. My second August read is Summer at Shell Cottage by Lucy Diamond. I have read 2 books of hers before. I've read Summer with My Sister and The Beach Cafe. Absolutely loved both of those books. This author's really, really good with just sort of writing fluffy, heartwarming stories. And they go really quickly. They're absolute page turners for me and I love them. So I'm looking forward to this Lucy Diamond book. The third book I'd like to read in August is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. I'm sorry if I've butchered that name. This is about a girl whose parents are trying to arrange a marriage for her, but she doesn't know about it. She's into computing and she goes to this like computer summer camp thing, and I think her potential future husband is there and he knows about the arranged marriage. she doesn't, and he tries to get to know her, and he kind of lets her know about what her parents are arranging, and she goes crazy. And I've always been absolutely fascinated by arranged marriages. I'm really looking forward to this book, and I haven't heard a bad thing said about it. I'm so excited. And then the final book that I'd like to read in August is 99 Red Balloons by Elizabeth Carpenter. My good friend Charlie over at Duvet Day Devours, who I'll link down below, sent this to me. She got it as an ARC, and I told her how much I was anticipating this book and how lucky she was, and she said to me, I'll send it to you when I've read it, and she did, and oh my god, I can't believe I've got this book. So this is about a young girl who gets kidnapped, and it's really like, so far I've read like 35 pages, and it reminds me of The Girl in the Red Coat. So if you liked that book, you'll probably like this one. I think this is the book I'm most excited about reading this month. So that was my July wrap up and my August TBR. Let me know what you're planning on reading in August down in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And I've got links to my Instagram and Goodreads down below as well. I hope you're enjoying what you're reading, and I'll see you soon. Bye.